Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Hello, feely humans. Welcome to another episode of You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and this is episode 119 with my guest, Maggie Jones. Maggie has, since we chatted on the podcast a few months ago, she's become a dear friend of mine. We live in different states, but I feel very close to her, and she's very special to me, and she has a huge heart, and I think you'll really enjoy this episode. In this episode, we talk about intergenerational trauma, the cultural pressure put on mothers, feeling permission to be who we are, trying to befriend our inner critic, and the heartbreak and healing in intuitive grief. The trigger warning for this episode is that we talk a little bit about suicidal ideation, depression, a little bit touch on eating disorders, and the death of a child are mentioned. Maggie lost her sweet Olive at 18 months, 4 days, just about 4 years ago. And, it's tremendously heartbreaking, but she shares her story very beautifully. And, give Maggie a follow on Instagram. She's at Sacred Circle Holistic Healing. Sacred Circle Holistic Healing. She is a wonderful, feely human. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Before we get to the episode, though, a couple of things. One, I just wanted to share just my gratitude for all of you for supporting the Feely Human Collective crowdfunding campaign. There were over 100 of you who contributed, and I'm just so thankful for all of you. And I shared a post over on Instagram at Feely Human, mentioning each and every one of you. So go check that out. Give it a like. Just thank you. It's this thing is crowdfunding is exhausting, but and I believe so much in the mission of the Feely Human Collective. And if you want to learn more about it, go to feelyhuman.co, feelyhuman.co. And the website should be out very soon. I'm hoping later this month or early April. I still got a lot to do, but shout out to Tristan, my new friend Tristan, who's been helping a lot with just behind the scenes admin stuff, social stuff. I just couldn't be more proud of Tristan for helping out. She's a mom of 3 and she's lending her time, which I just feel so grateful for. So thank you, Tristan, for that. The other thing I wanted to mention is just something personal, I've been sort of feeling and experiencing lately, and maybe you can all relate, is I have, through doing this show and through doing the crowdfunding campaign, it's been kind of clear that there are people in our lives who, maybe don't see us or accept us for who we are. And that's hard. That's hard to sort of come to terms with. And especially it's hard, when those people are, family or people in your life you think like, they should, right? But the reality is that, the people we choose to include in our lives are the people. And, you are all my people is what I'm trying to say. You see me and accept me, and you see the value and beauty in sharing your heart and being curious about your emotions and just exploring all of this stuff. And because it allows us to see it and find perspective and grow through it and eventually connect with each other through empathy and vulnerability. And it's a beautiful work that we're all doing together. So, I just wanted to share that. Your people are the people who see you and accept you. Okay, last thing, make sure to give You, Me, Empathy a follow on the socials at YouMeEmpathy and give Feely Human a follow at Feely Human. FeelyHuman.co is the website if you want to sign up for the email list. Make sure to leave a rating and review of You Me Empathy in Apple Podcasts. It's free and it helps out the show, gets more listeners onto this empathy stuff that we all love. Come on, you know you love it. You love it. It's the best. Empathy is the best. I love empathy. I don't know what that was about, but okay, let's get to the episode. Let's get to the episode now with my dear friend Maggie Jones on the inner critic and intuitive grief. Enjoy.
La la la, you, me, empathy, yeah, la la la.
Welcome to You Me Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You Me Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You Me Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm in a glass case of feely emotion because I'm here with holistic life coach, tarot teacher, astrology healer, and new friend, Maggie Jones. Hello, Maggie.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you. You are someone I've been wanting to have on the podcast for a while, and it's true. I feel like we have been chatting. Listeners should know we've been chatting and we text every once in a while. I consider you a new friend, even though we're in different states.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same.
That's
for
nice.
Sure.
So
yeah.
let's do an emotional check-in. How are you feeling? How's the week been? How are you feeling right now?
Let me see. How has the week been? Right now, I'm feeling a little bit flustered. I've had some technological difficulties over the last couple days. I like to blame it on Mercury retrograde, but we all do. So I have to take some responsibility probably. But yeah, so my heater in my office went out, and that was a little stressful because it's been really cold in Kansas where I'm at. And so I had to get something figured out for that. And then right before we started the podcast, I realized that my Skype app was not working. And so I just got a little bit flustered trying to download all that, and us starting late and all of that. So I'm trying to ground into my body a little bit. I can feel my heart kind of fluttering. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, I'm sorry you're feeling flustered. I totally understand that and get that. I think, as I was mentioning before we got recording, Skype can be finicky, and the most important thing is that you're here now, and there's no fret about starting a little later. That's not a big deal. And you're in a safe space. Do you want to do some sort of grounding exercise right now together?
Oh, we can if you want to. I'm sitting here holding I have a big piece of black tourmaline. Ooh. I use crystals.
Okay.
For especially for grounding. And so we absolutely can. I'm totally fine. If not, I can feel myself kind of grounding. I have a blanket on my lap,
Sounds very cozy.
Very cozy. Yeah, my office is a cozy space. I definitely like cozy. So either, we can if you want. Otherwise, I'm okay too.
All right. I just offer that up. I mean, I don't know what that would look like. You would probably have to lead something like that, but I only bring it up because I want you to feel comfortable sort of, navigating the path forward.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I do. I'm looking forward to this. I was realizing when I was thinking about doing this podcast with you, I spend a lot of time listening to other people talk, which is something I feel very comfortable with and I enjoy very much. But I have rarely spent an hour of time where the focus was on me and my story.
Sure.
And so that was interesting to kind of have that realization and be like, oh, this is just going to be a new experience for me to talk about myself for such an extended period of time. I'm here for it.
I'm so grateful you are here, and I will say that it's a courageous step you're taking. Like, I think it's hard to be vulnerable and to share, our personal stories. Like, that's a hard thing to do. So you showing up and willing to do that and share your heart is a great gift, and I commend you as a friend, and I'm happy you're here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks again for asking me.
Always. I'll give you time to further ground while I blab about my emotional check-in.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
So
love to hear where you're at.
I've been having my depression has been kind of on the lower side lately, and I've had sort of some darkness. I think I scared my wife the other day because I had mentioned that, I kind of pass through sometimes feelings of just not active suicidal ideation, but just kind of feelings of like general, like, let's put an end to this. And I think it's very much tied into my depression. And so to sort of be my own advocate and try to focus on self-care, which is something that I struggle with, I've stopped drinking because alcohol is a depressant. And so I wanted to see how that is. And the other thing I did this week is I finally made a follow-up appointment and went and saw my naturopath, who has been sort of helping me through my stomach issues, which are vast and plenty. And he, we were having a conversation yesterday and talking about how, like, I know in my body that when I'm not exercising, when I'm not spending time to kind of like connect with nature, moving a little bit, like, my depression is gonna take a hit, and it's all sort of connected, and it's connected to my tum-tum. It's all sort of connected. So I need to be better about self-care. I need to be better about taking time to ground myself and to get outside because, it plays a role in my depression. So that's kind of what my week was like.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you relate to that at all?
Go ahead. I do actually. And I know I focused on the last like 10 minutes when I did my check-in because I was feeling quite flustered. I'm feeling better now. But yeah, I too have been, I've been struggling as well with similar issues as far as slowing down and finding time for myself. Excuse me. I am a single mom, which I know I've mentioned to you before. It can be hard for me to slow down and find time for myself as far as running my own business. And then also on top of that, I have a 2-year-old who I am raising by myself. I do have some help from my family to watch her while I see clients and that kind of thing. But otherwise, it's just me and her. And so I find that as a mother, it's, at least for me, it's really hard to balance my focus on her needs and then also even take into account at all my own needs. Often it's just at the end of the day, I get her in bed and I've done everything that I need to do to make sure that she's cared for. And then a lot of times I just feel completely wiped out and empty, myself, because I'm too exhausted to do, well, anything for myself. It's time to go to bed. And that's kind of when I get into that cycle, I also start to feel kind of depressed.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've struggled with depression, but in my teenage years, I really struggled a lot with depression and anxiety. And it's been a few years since I've really conceptualized it like that, as far as like consistently dealing with it. But it definitely flares up if I'm not taking care of myself, which I think is the case for most people,
Yeah. What strikes me interesting about that, and I appreciate you sharing, is this idea that, like, intellectually, you and I, Maggie, know that, we need to take care of ourselves to allow us to better take care of the people in our lives, right? Like that's
absolutely.
That's like how it needs to go. That's like the step one, and then step two, take care of ourselves, take care of others. But often we flip that, and we know it intellectually. We know it like in our hearts that that's the right path, but it's hard to get there. Why do you think it's so hard? I mean, obviously you're dealing with the fact that you're running your own business. You're a single mom raising a 2-year-old. That's probably one of the hardest jobs on the planet.
Yeah, it's I think when I think about it and I think of different scenarios, in different life circumstances, I think there can be a whole host of reasons that people tend to do that. But I think one of the biggest, one of the biggest reasons why people do that is because, our culture in general is not, we talk a lot about self-care, I know it's a buzzword, it really has become popular. But generally speaking, I think that our culture really shoves down our throat from a very young age that if we're not being productive and and I know that's a little different than caring for other people, but I think there's this, the same vein underneath it. It's like, if we're not being productive, if we're not doing the things that we need to do in our day-to-day lives to look like we've got our shit together or whatever it may be, I think it can be really hard to feel good about yourself, So it's like, I think a lot of times the push to do the things you need to do comes before the self-care, which like you just said, intellectually, we know that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But it can be really, really hard to feel like you can actually slow down and take care of yourself, because that's just not what we're taught culturally,
I know. That's such a good point. Like what I struggle with is, and I feel like I do a decent job of sort of fighting back against that idea. And I feel like what I struggle with is how, as humans, we're so susceptible to it, because it is this pervasive cultural touchstone that we're all, like you said, we all grew up with. But it's also, I'm not going to again, I'm painting this in a simple way, but it's also, at the end of the day, who gives a shit what this sort of corporation or this cultural norm says that we should be this thing, or we need to sort of work 12-hour days, or we need to sleep perfectly to our REM cycle. We need to drink mushroom teas and crush life and all these things. It's how do you... For you, how do you sort of resist that stuff? Do you have sort of tools to kind of remind yourself that, hey, look, I'm doing my thing, and that's important, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's really interesting that we're talking about this right now, because I'm going to be completely honest. And for the last couple months, I have really struggled with this, really struggled in ways that I haven't in years, which has been very interesting to me. And so it's interesting that you ask me about the tools I've been using, because I'm like, over the last couple months, I've really struggled to find the tools, because my inner critic, especially around productivity and, just a lot of it has been around productivity, but I mean, just the inner critic in general has just been very, very loud. And I'm just going to, just be completely honest about that. That's just something that I've been working with, especially as a single mom, because when I recently moved back to Kansas, which is where my family lives, and I did that so that I could have the support of my family. But it's also just a really interesting thing to be a mother, and when, just the dynamic of when you choose to stay home with your child, because mothers, there's that constant pressure to care for your children, but also provide for them, work while also raising them. And it's like kind of a standard that's not there. There's really no way to do it all,
Right.
So it's just been a really interesting process for me the last couple of months, because I've been very aware of my inner critic, just saying like you're not doing enough. You're having to lean on your family for support. And there's all these things that when I'm with clients, I'm going to say, of course you need help. Of course, all these things, but my inner voices have been pretty loud about that recently. Actually, it's been an interesting couple months for that to be flaring up for me.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. It's I love that. I mean, I love the fact, like this is what I want for people, like therapists, people like yourself, healers, coaches. It's important to share that you struggle too. Right?
I agree. Yeah.
Like that's
right.
That should be
we're just human.
That's right. We're just human. We're just human. And I think you nailed it on the head when you said, like, there is this cultural pressure to be all the things, but even more so, like even more pressure just to what does a mom look like, right? Like a mom is a superhero. A mom does all the things. A mom cares for her kids. Her mom is emotionally available for her kids. Her mom works and and sells candles and has these side businesses, and also also is on the board of trustees and is in the PTA. Like that's what a mom is and should be like, and that's just so deeply unfair.
Yeah, it really is, and it does a disservice. It does a disservice to everyone, because when mothers are, because most moms, it's, when I talk to moms, and moms that are my friends, moms that are maybe my clients, it's across the board. It's just the struggle to basically, because caring for kids, especially young kids that are in school, is a full-time job. It's a full-time job. And it's a job that doesn't stop at the end of the day either,
Right.
And so, and when you're a single parent, there's a whole nother layer of providing financially for your children too. And so it's like having two full-time jobs at the same time, and it's stressful. And when culturally we do put so much pressure on mothers, and there's also the whole, there's a lot of criticism in our culture of mothers. If you work and you're not home with your kids, you're criticized. If you choose to stay home with your kids and then you are not working, there's also some criticism there, because then what, you can't provide for them financially, if you're single. And so it just does a disservice to everyone, because our children are our future, and which is cliche, but it's cliche, like you said, because it's true. And it just does a disservice to really everyone.
Wasn't there a song about that? I believe the
What?
children are future.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there definitely is. I don't know the lyrics or I would chime in, but
Yeah, no, that's the only part I know.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
There definitely is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And now I lost my train of thought with that silly joke.
No, it's
I guess so. What I hear you saying is you have a full-time job. You're trying to grow your business. You're a single mom of a 2-year-old. And you getting help from your family, like there's no shame in that. Like that's
I know. Yeah.
that's completely reasonable. Like anyone would need
I
that
know.
support.
I know. And then that's the ludicrous part, it's like, oh, there's this, our inner critic is just such an interesting thing. And I think that that's something that really needs to be normalized for everyone, because everyone has an inner critic,
Yep.
and it's usually when we can talk all day about cultural pressure, but at the end of the day, I think what really what really gets people is their own inner critic, because if external pressure, is what it is, but once it's internalized, that's when it's really, really hard, and I think one of the best ways to work with your inner critic is to try to befriend it, which is hard and is kind of counterintuitive, but it's something that I learned in my graduate school program, because my grad school program, I had to do 2 years of mindfulness meditation to graduate from my program, which is it's pretty rare, and I'm really thankful for it, actually.
What program?
That was I got my master's in transpersonal counseling psychology from Naropa University, which is in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
It's a private school, it's private. It's Buddhist inspired, which just means that it's not religious. It's not a religious school. It's not. You don't have to be a Buddhist to go there, but the education is Buddhist inspired in that there's a lot of Eastern philosophy mixed with Western philosophy. So,
I dig that.
Yeah, it was a really, really great. It was a great experience. I am very happy with my decision to get my education there. But one of the things that I learned through my mindfulness practice, and mindfulness is just such a huge part of what I use with clients, because it's been so formative in my personal growth over the last 10 years, is that our inner critic, because if you start to, I don't know if you've ever done any mindfulness meditation. Have you ever dabbled in any of that?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So most people, when you start out, it becomes pretty obvious from the very beginning that your mind is just kind of always going.
Right.
Like it's pretty fascinating, if it's for the first time you've ever stopped and just like watched what goes on in your head for any amount of time, and sometimes you will see the critic, and for some people, I think it's really, really, really loud. And for other people, it's not quite as loud. But one of the things that I learned that was really helpful for me is to think of the critic as it's actually a part of myself that's trying to protect me. It's trying very hard to protect me. And the way that it thinks it can protect me is by picking apart every little thing I do so that I don't make mistakes and so that I don't do it wrong, or I don't mess up, I don't get in trouble, all of these things. And what it thinks is that as long as it criticizes me, as long as it makes me anxious, as long as it makes me, overthink things and like try to check things over and over again, I might get it right. So at its core, it's trying to protect me. But of course, it's also dysfunctional, and at one time probably served me really well. But as the adult I am now, if I give into that too much, it's going to paralyze me and hold me back. But when I started to look at the critic as something that was actually trying it's at its core, it's positive, you know. I could kind of, when I hear those voices, maybe soften a little bit and be like, oh, I hear you, you know, you're trying to protect me. I get it. You can take a back seat though. I've got this, you know.
I love that analogy. I mean, I love the way you describe it. It's very, you're being very compassionate to yourself and to that inner critic. And I think that is the path forward for, you know, external critics as well, right? Like it's in a lot of ways, like, or with people in general, like it's, you have to sort of dive in and be curious about it and not, like we have this notion that like, this is what this thing is. This is what my inner critic looks like. But we don't know until we look at it, befriend it, as you say, and then, you know, learn about it. And then, you know, like I love the reframe of like, look, like my inner critic is just trying to protect me. It's just misguided. Right. And
Absolutely.
so like, I think that seems very healthy to me.
Yep. Yeah. And just approaching it with some curiosity rather than like anger, you know, I mean, because it's so easy to be like, oh my God, shut up. Like,
Right.
why am I like still, you know, like chastising myself for something that happened like, or, you know, last week or 5 months ago, you know?
Oh yeah. I do it all the time.
I do it too. I think everyone does, you know, and I think that anybody says they don't,
They're liars.
I think they're lying because it's there. They're liars. Yeah. It's just a part of being human. I'm fairly certain.
One of the things, so you mentioned in what you were just describing, like this inner critic or this inner self being maybe having served you at one point in your life, but maybe doesn't now. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think that it's that way with most things. The way that I look at most behaviors that are quote unquote dysfunctional, and the reason I would categorize, you know, if I'm going to look at a behavior, I would categorize it as dysfunctional if it's interfering with our functioning in the present, or if it's not helpful. It's probably something to be looked at. But I also, most things, you know, and this is kind of a pushback against a lot of Western medicine, or just like the westernized way of looking at mental health issues is there's kind of just this tendency to pathologize different behaviors and look at them as a problem and kind of look at them in a vacuum rather than look at them holistically and kind of question where they came from in the first place.
So it's like when I first was trying to figure out my depression and I went to the doctor and the doctor said, oh, you have depression, take these pills and then move on your way. I got to see the next patient.
Yep. Just like that. And to be like, this person has depression, period. This person has depression. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? You know, does that mean there's something wrong with this person? Does that mean that this person is, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, why does this person have depression? And is depression a static state that like, is it something that we need to necessarily medicate? You know, sometimes medications are great and sometimes they are not what someone needs, you know? But so anyways, yes. So the tendency, my view, I look at it as a little bit of a pushback against that tendency to look at behavior, to not look at the entire person and where the behavior came from. Because usually the behavior, at least I've found, usually the behavior can be traced back to some kind of situation, typically in childhood, where that behavior was necessary, absolutely necessary for their survival. So with depression can be a little bit different. And because I think people are depressed and experience depression for a variety of reasons, and I think it can look very different for different people. I know there's a specific set of symptoms in the DSM and stuff, but I think that depression can vary widely, why it occurs and like how it occurs for people.
Yeah.
But one very specific example with depression, for instance, sometimes in family systems, it serves a child to depress their emotions. It serves them to make themselves small. It serves them to not express the whole wide range of emotions. And that can be in a family system, for instance, where there's lots of chaos, and so for them, it's like, if I just make myself small, I can help by not making the chaos worse.
Oh my gosh. Sure.
This is a very specific example.
Well, that example describes my situation.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's
yeah, I was,
yeah.
I was, my family's very, I have very opinionated and loud, sort of boisterous people in my family, and very stubborn, including me, of course. And growing up, middle child, I have two younger brothers, older sister. It was a little chaos. My father was terrifying and violent, and so what I did was sort of shut down. I shut down. I used the description of my heart guard. I put a guard around my heart, and I tried to be quiet, and I tried to, and that was the tool that served me then, is to your point, and I realized later on didn't serve me. I think it almost killed me, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And one of the things I learned in grad school, and this is, and I say this like whenever I talk about what depression is, I don't ever want to get too rigid about it, because everybody's experience is different. But like you said, like the heart guard, one of the things that really resonated with me that I think I first learned in graduate school about depression is that I'm trying to think of the exact metaphor that was used, but it was like, it's when so just like imagine a piano and all the keys and your ability. So your emotions are the different keys on the piano. And so ideally you're able to play all the different keys. So feel all the different levels of emotions and nuance of emotion, all the way from the very low keys that are booming to the very high keys that are and it's just a very it's a huge spectrum, right, of emotion. But when you're in a situation like you just described, where you have a terrifying father, you have a lot of big personalities happening at the same time, maybe clashing, maybe being scary, we're not able to play all the keys anymore, because it's like, if we play the keys that are too far out here or too far out here, we get the message that it causes problems, and so we our world gets smaller and smaller and smaller to where we can only play a couple keys. But then things kind of start to calcify and slow down, and our life force energy kind of just solidifies. And that's kind of what, when I feel in my body what depression feels like, it's like, it's heavy. There's not this spontaneity, there's not this ability to just be who we are truly, I think, supposed to be,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, but like you were saying, like I said in the beginning, those things served us at one time. And so I think with really anything, with the inner critic, at one time, maybe we really, really, really needed to make sure we didn't mess up, because maybe if we did, we would have, maybe our life would have been on the line, and for a child, your life being on the line can feel if your parents are going to withdraw their approval from you as a child, that feels like your life is on the line,
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, it's it can be really easy to be I grew up in a family that was very, it was very normal. Wasn't severely abusive. It wasn't all of these things, but I still have these problems. And as children, it can feel like life or death if there are things like, okay, I have to be pretty perfect in order to have the affection of my caregivers, or if what was that?
I was just going to ask, is that how you felt as a child?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I mean, my childhood, I grew up in a really small town, in a very conservative small town. So like there was like 2,000 people in the town that I grew up in.
Wow.
And I think my graduating class had like 40 people in it. Yeah. And the town was, I mean, I would say, I don't know if this is the exact percentage, but I mean, 99% Catholic, but I wasn't Catholic.
Got it.
So I was not raised Catholic. And so from the get-go, I felt like an outsider.
So your whole family wasn't Catholic?
My whole family wasn't Catholic, yeah.
Got it.
And so my whole family kind of felt like outsiders, in the community. Yeah, so my family had been there for multiple generations, and I think there was some intergenerational trauma that was passed down to me that, because my family system was very enmeshed, and I really, just because of my personality, I feel like that deeply, deeply impacted my ability to differentiate in between, become my own person. I was very focused on being what I believed other people needed me to be. And there was the part of me, I think, that needed to do that for my family, because that was just kind of, that's just what I had modeled for me, throughout my family system. It was kind of there was not a lot of conflict. I never really saw conflict navigated that much, because there was just lots of caring for each other's emotions in a way that wasn't very healthy, not a lot of open disagreement or a lot of individualism really at all.
Help me understand that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
You are describing a family unit that was functional and connected, but not a lot of emotion sharing. Is that what I hear?
I think it's debatable if I would call it functional.
Okay.
I think on the surface, it was very functional. And I think, I think that some of my family members would consider it functional, but from my perspective and from just the work I've done through my own personal growth and just trying to understand how my family system impacted me, I would say that it was actually in a lot of ways very toxic, just because there was so much. It was expected that you take care of everybody else's feelings instead of your own. And I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it.
Yeah, yeah. Was that due to like the sort of how a small town works, kind of thing?
I do think there's some cultural pieces to it like that. Yeah. And I think a lot of, in general, I think that the way families function often, especially when it comes to boundaries, emotional boundaries and individualism, and individuation and all of that, it is very, very, such a cultural thing, like in the United States and in Western culture, we really value the individual, I mean, there's a value in being the individual. And then there's also, there are the cultures that are more communal, and they are going to value the community and the family unit over the individual.
Right.
And who's to really say which is healthy and which is not? But in Western culture, we really do tend to think of being able to become your own person and to individualize. I think in our culture, it's pretty important that you're able to do that. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why family systems that make that process difficult for people as they're growing up are looked at as toxic in our culture. I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah,
You
that
follow
totally
what I'm
makes
saying?
sense.
Yeah.
Help me understand a little bit how you sort of process that and what it looked like for you sort of growing up. Like the picture I'm sort
Hmm.
of gleaning maybe is you kind of did all the things that you thought you needed to do and didn't necessarily feel like you had the opportunity to really express yourself. So what did that look like through sort of, high school, elementary school?
Hmm. In elementary school, it's such an interesting thing to reflect upon because I write about a little bit about this in my About Me section of my website. But in grade school, um, I was really very unaware of all of this, this whole dynamic. I was just kind of blissfully unaware is kind of how it felt.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but as soon as I got into high school, kind of pretty abruptly my freshman year, I started to I started to become depressed and I started to become anxious. And I had a car accident that was actually like, and I don't know, my life has been kind of cut up into these chapters of time. That's kind of how I conceptualize it.
Yeah.
And the first chapter of my life was from the time I was born until I had this car accident when I was 15, 16 years old. And I had had a fight with my dad that morning, and and I was upset. It was the first day of summer vacation, I think, after my freshman year. And I got in the car, and I was driving to try to calm myself down, and just, I don't know, just get away from my family, for a
Sure.
little bit. And so I was driving along, going about 65 miles per hour. I had my cruise control set, didn't have my seatbelt on, and the last thing I remember is I was just driving along on this highway. It was overcast, and I went around this curve, and I remember looking down the hill, getting ready to go over a bridge, and there was a curve in the road, and I went straight off the road.
Wow.
And I came to, and I'm going to put that in quotations. I came to because I don't know if I actually was passed out. I don't know exactly what happened there, but there was probably a couple seconds of missing time. And I came to as I was coming off the highway when my tires hit the gravel because it was so loud. And I was flying through the air, I was airborne in my car. I remember seeing the airbags kind of unfold really slowly, in slow-mo. And then my car landed and the transmission fell out, which is a blessing because then my car couldn't really go that much further. But it ended up kind of curving and hitting the embankment and just crashing and stopping,
Wow.
And I walked away from that physically unscathed. Like my body, like I had a little burn from my seat, but not from my seatbelt because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, but from my when the airbags deployed, I had a little bit of a burn, but that was it. That was it. Like, which was a miracle because if you saw the car, it'd be like that person didn't survive,
Wow,
but I walked
that's
away.
intense.
It was a really intense experience. And that's like the beginning of the second chapter of my life, because really it was very interesting because I had that couple seconds of time that was missing. But when I walked away from that accident, I felt like a different person. And that's the only way I can describe it. I was a different person. I was no longer blissfully unaware. It was like all of a sudden I was depressed, and I'd never been really depressed before. I was anxious. I developed an eating disorder right around that same time. And I mean, you can even, if you were to ask my family about it, they would say that I was a different kid, I mean, that's the way they felt about me, is like, I was suddenly a different kid. And so at that point, I went to all these different doctors and specialists trying to figure out, like, number one, why I had passed out, and then like all these kind of quote unquote mysterious health issues that were kind of presenting themselves all of a sudden after this accident that I had.
Wow.
And one of the reasons why I'm telling you this is I'm leading up to what I now conceptualize as I mean, the car accident itself, I have no explanation for. I don't know what happened there. But following the car accident and the mental health issues that I ended up having, and then also the physical issues that I ended up having, felt like a manifestation of to me, it was like pretty much my way of shutting my body and myself down so that I no longer would have the desire and have the natural inclination to keep growing up and differentiating and becoming my own person. So like I had listened to your podcast about your eating disorder and your experience with your eating disorder. And so I know that, it's like when you stop eating, it's like your body literally stops developing.
Right.
I mean, it stops. It's like everything just kind of stops. And I think because I felt so much pressure to not become my own person, because I thought who I was going to become was going to upset people. I was going to upset my family. I was going to disappoint my family. I was going to disappoint my community. I thought I was going to be hated, all these things. I developed a lot of physical and mental manifestations of that kind of pressure, and fear and grief that I felt about not being able to do that. And this was all subconscious at the time. Obviously,
Right.
I had no idea what was going on. I was just sick. Didn't know why.
Wow. And it all sort of happened pretty quickly after this car accident?
Yes. Yeah. It was really interesting. I had the car accident, and immediately after the car accident, I stopped eating, and my family, they were like, why? And I was like, because every time I eat, I feel sick. Which was absolutely true. I physically felt sick when I would eat. But I also, there was also a lot of control issues going on there, because I was like, that's the one thing I can control. And if I can't be myself, then I needed something that I could feel in control of, and so
Of course.
fasting, there's a high with that, and there's also just like, it feels good to a certain degree, quote unquote, when you have no control over anything else. But I ended up finding out eventually that my stomach had completely shut down. Like my gastrointestinal tract had become completely paralyzed. But the interesting thing about that is that they could never find a physical reason why it happened.
Wow. And you
So
saw, countless doctors and tests and all that?
Yep, I missed most of my. I think it was I had the car accident it was the end of my sophomore year. I think that I had that car accident. I said my end of my freshman, but I think it was actually the end of my sophomore year. And then going into my junior year, I missed most of my junior year of high school because I was in and out of doctor's offices so much. Yeah, and so I went to all these different specialists trying to figure out what was going on. And I remember one doctor eventually saying that I'm pretty sure this is just a functional problem. And what he meant by that is that at the time, I thought that he was saying it was all in my head because I was a teenager, and it's the only way I could take what he was saying. But he was basically saying, we can't find a physical reason why any of this is happening. It's probably related to what's going on for her psychologically and emotionally, which now looking back, I absolutely think that is true.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. Like a couple of things I'm struck by. First of all, the food piece of it and the restricting, like food is an emotional thing, right? It nourishes us. And like, it is wrapped up in this sort of emotion. And when we're like, I know for me, when I was feeling like, I wanted to control and I, there was a lot of emotions wrapped up in it. Like, I didn't deserve this food. The food would, give me strength, and I don't deserve that strength. Like all these things wrapped up in it. Did you have that?
I did. Yep. Yeah. And the layers of complexity with that are just so crazy for me. Like, I mean, cause like you just said, I had those feelings of like, I don't deserve this. I'm like, I'm bad, so like I just don't even deserve to live, which translates to I don't even deserve to eat,
Right.
But then there was a whole nother piece for me of being a female and being a woman in this small community, because physically I developed pretty quickly, as far as like I had boobs when I was in 7th grade, like bigger than like my classmates. And I was always very aware of my physical body, because growing up in a community that's very heavily Catholic, or just any really probably a religious community, there's going to be some baggage around sexuality.
Oh yeah.
And
young
definitely.
women are sort of pawns in that Catholic game.
Exactly. Yep. And so I got the message from a pretty early age from my classmates, but also from older men in the community, which is very sad and pretty disgusting, but that I was a sexual object, even though I had no desire to be a sexual object at all. My body was just developing. And so I endured pretty intense sexual harassment from, who I considered friends at the time. And then, I still consider them friends today. And I would laugh it off, because I was in high school and these were like high school boys,
Sure.
Some older men, but like mostly high school boys, that would be commenting on my body all the time, and so there was also this piece of like just wanting to disappear and like not be seen as a sex object, because sexuality was also very heavily shamed,
Yeah.
on a whole lot of levels. And so that was another piece of it for me, just wanting my body to get smaller and like more inconspicuous. And like, I remember losing my boobs and I was so happy about it, because I didn't get any more attention from guy, no more unwanted attention, so there was just lots and lots of layers. But the other piece of that is like, I didn't feel like I was going to grow up, like I was like, if I die at age 15, then I'm not going to have to become 17, 18, 19, 20 and try to become this person that like people aren't going to want me to be,
What is the person that people don't want you to be?
Well, at the time, it was, I'm bisexual, I'm queer. I've known I was bisexual since I was probably, very young, like 1st, 2nd grade. I didn't know what it was called, but I just knew that I was attracted to girls and boys, and, the homophobia is really intense in the town that I grew up in. It's often covert and not overt, but doesn't matter. Still the message is still very strong that like, it's not really okay, you know, and I got made fun. I never told anybody that I didn't tell anybody how I identified at that time, but I was also I was always very outspoken about like gay rights and marriage equality and all that kind of stuff. And I got made fun of by teachers for that in the high school I went to. Like my government teacher, I remember making fun of me openly in front of the class for being like, pro gay rights, whatever.
Wow.
So that was part of it. Yeah. I didn't want to be ostracized, because it was very important to me to like be liked. Being liked was like, I don't know if you've ever heard of there's the fight, flight, freeze, that are the 3, really well-known ones. But then there's also the fawn response. Have you ever heard of the fawn response?
No, I don't think so.
It's FAWN, fawn. And basically it's a people-pleasing response to trauma.
Oh, yeah.
It's when you fawn, it's like, I'm just going to like bat my eyes and like be what you need me to be in order to fit in and make sure that I'm safe, Yeah. And that was my main coping mechanism, was to just make sure that I was fitting in and that I was what everybody kind of expected me to be. I was a cheerleader. I was a homecoming queen. I was also very, very, very depressed, incredibly depressed, So kind of living a double life.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Like I'm having a hard time seeing you as the homecoming queen.
Yeah. I know. A homecoming queen. I was the valedictorian in my class, salutatorian, I guess, like,
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you come out?
So I started grad school when I was 23. So in college, I didn't come out. And one of the reasons I didn't come out is because as being bisexual, and this is something that is common among bisexuals in the queer community, is that you don't feel like you're queer enough. You don't feel like you're gay enough, but you also are obviously not straight. So it's like, where do you fit,
Right.
And when you're younger, when you're trying to fit yourself into a box, it's like, if I date straight men, straight cis men, am I still bisexual even though I have a boyfriend?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
kind of, it's just a little tricky. Identity is just tricky like that. It's like, what
Totally.
can I claim as mine? If I'm not enough this or enough that. And so it took me until I was probably, I think I probably like officially came out like 4 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
So late in my 20s.
Yeah.
I'm 33 right now. So yeah.
You're 33?
Mm-hmm.
You're a youngster.
I know. I am. I am to people who are older than 33.
Well put.
Yeah.
That's like, and that's where this idea of like fluidity comes in, and I think there's a lot of value in that, right? Like, because
Absolutely.
there is such a tendency to like, this is me and this is my thing, and that's what that means, right? We've been talking about that, in terms of Western medicine, right? It's like, this is
Absolutely.
this is my identification, and these are the sort of bullet points that sort of make up that identification, and then I can move on, right? But that's not based in reality.
No, it's not. No, people are so much more complex than that.
Yeah.
So much more complex. And I identify as bisexual, but I mean, or queer. Queer is what I really prefer, because it's like, then it can be kind of anything, anything outside of straight. But there for a while, I could just as easily call myself pansexual, because I'm not only, but the thing is that bisexual implies a binary, where I don't even believe in a gender binary at all, so there's just, it's so complex.
Yeah.
All of that identity stuff really is just very, very complex and fluid, like you said. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally fluid.
100%. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you go through this time after this car accident, and you're experiencing depression, you're having a battle with eating disorder. Like, how did you come out of that? How did you get through that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was also suicidal during that time. I just want to put that out there, because I think it's just good to normalize that,
Absolutely.
But I ended up getting my parents to let me go down to where I grew up is like an hour and a half away from the college town that I now live in currently. And they let me, the summer between my junior and my senior year, they allowed me to live in the dorms and take a Spanish class, a college level Spanish class, on campus at KU, at the University of Kansas. And that changed everything, because I got out of the small town. I got away from my family. I didn't have people breathing down my neck. I was in a liberal place, for the quote unquote liberal place, for the first time ever in my life, where, I'd walk down the street and I'd see people that looked different. I'd see people that were gay, and it changed everything for me, everything. And amazingly, I started eating again. I was no longer on a liquid diet. My stomach started working again. All just, based on
feeling
getting
safe.
out. I'm feeling safe. Yeah. Just feeling safe and feeling like the permission to be myself. Because when you're on a college campus for the first time, and you're like, what, 16, and you've been in a very, in my opinion, very repressed environment for a very long time. That's liberating, to say the least, college campuses. It was liberating.
Yeah.
And that is really what pulled me out of it. And then I was very depressed when I had to go back for my entire senior year of high school. And that was really hard, but I survived it. And one of the reasons why I survived it is because I was like, there's an end in sight.
Right.
Like one more year of this and I get to like really leave, you know?
You saw the other
so,
side.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I saw the other side. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. And I have to say too, at the time, and I want to say this because I think that we trivialize relationships in high school, you know, in our teen years, to just be kind of like, oh, they're just teenagers, you know, just culturally, you know, not everyone necessarily, but I also have to say that my relationship during that time that I had with my boyfriend kept me afloat, you know. I mean, it was a true friendship, you know, and it was one of my only true friendships during that time. And I have to say that also is what helped me come out the other side of that.
Yeah.
Which I think is just really important. You know, relationships are really important.
Yeah. Connections with people are important, right?
Yep. Yep.
We can't,
Yep.
as much as we want to or try, we need people.
Yep, we do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People that actually are willing to accept us in our full humanity, you know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So another piece of your story that I found very fascinating, and you had mentioned it in your bio on your website, is the fact that you were a mentor in this like Big Brothers Big Sisters program. Can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah, that is another really formative experience for me, because it was one of the things that I got to do in the small town that I was growing up in. Really one of the only things that I got to do during that time that felt very much like me, you know, like it was a very true expression of who I am in a way that, was accepted, you know what I mean? Was socially acceptable within the context of my community. But I was a mentor in Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I was given a young girl that had a whole lot of, you know, she'd been very severely abused, and she was only a few years younger than me, chronologically, but she emotionally was much younger. And I spent a couple years with her regularly, you know, a couple years we would see each other regularly. And yeah, it was during that time that I really realized that just holding compassionate space for other people and letting them be who they are, it was just so obvious that, number one, I feel really strongly about the power of that. Yeah. And then number two, that I really that I was really good at that. You know, I wanted to do that in the future for people in some way.
Wow.
And so that was huge. That was a huge thing for me. And then the other thing I think that was huge as far as like my career development and just figuring out who I am and what gifts I have to offer people was when I volunteered for a suicide hotline when I was in college, and I got my undergrad in Spanish language and Latin American studies. So it didn't have anything to do with psychology, but on the side, I trained to be a counselor at a suicide hotline. And so in my free time, I was volunteering at the suicide hotline, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I did that for years at that suicide hotline. And that was just another thing where I was like, this is just what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, I'm supposed to be holding space for people and listening.
How did that feel? Because I know that, like, I'll use an anecdote from my own life. Like when I started doing You Me Empathy, this podcast, for instance, like there was a light bulb moment of like, oh, okay, this is what you need to be doing. This is the thing that fills your heart. This is the thing that really makes you feel alive. And so for you, like, I'm assuming you had that same sort of feeling of like, okay, this is what I've been seeking my whole life.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly the feeling. I mean, I just remember I loved that it was called Headquarters is what it was called. And I think it still exists, but it's changed hands and I'm no longer affiliated with them. But it was called Headquarters, and it was this just the office was just so nice and inviting and cozy. And I just remember doing overnights there because it was open 24/7. I mean, the hotline was 24/7, so you'd have to do overnight shifts every once in a while. And I just remember sitting in that office by myself on overnights, which could be a little stressful, because you would sleep between phone calls, but it's jarring to be woken up by a phone call knowing that on the other end someone's going to be likely suicidal.
Right.
But I just remember there being moments where I was just like, I love this. Like, I just love this. I love the fact that like I love being here for people. I just love it. And the reason I love it is because I know what it feels like to be feeling like you're alone in the world and there's no one there.
Yeah.
And it sucks and it's painful. And it's like one of the most painful places you can possibly be. And so it's just so fulfilling for me to provide solace for people and to be able to say, you're not alone. You're not alone. Period.
Empathy.
So that was, yay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, another piece of your story that, sort of sticks out for me, and we don't have to get into it if you don't want to, but, it struck me as maybe part of your sort of interest in maybe intuitive grief and that sort of part of your practice and your own self is your daughter, Olive, and that experience. Are you open to talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It'll be my first time talking about it publicly, which is totally fine. I am ready to do that. So I was 2 years into my graduate program. So my graduate program at Naropa in Boulder, when I was getting my master's to be a therapist, I found out that I was pregnant unexpectedly, and I was really happy about that. I was, immediately when I found out I was pregnant, I felt very connected to Olive, and I very fiercely protective and was excited about it. So I was 2 years into the 3-year program. So I ended up taking my third year, taking some time off and staying home with her, which I am so glad that I did, to care for her after she was born. And that first year of her life was just the best, the happiest time of my life, because it really was. I was just so happy being her mom. I really was. And I loved her so much. And we just had such a good time together. I cherished that so much. But then, so at 11 months old, she was very healthy, very healthy the entire 11 months up until she started getting some bruises on her body. And I was, at first I was like, that's weird, like, where did that bruise come from, kind of thing. And then more and more bruises started showing up. So I took her to the pediatrician, and he was like, well, we need to draw some blood. And so we tried to draw some blood, and they couldn't find a vein, which was traumatic because she was so tiny. She was only 11 months old.
Yeah.
And so he sent me home, and he was like, since she just seems, everything else seems so normal. She seems happy. She seems healthy in every other way. Just watch it for a couple nights, and if she gets another bruise, if another bruise shows up and it's not improving, you're going to need to bring her to the children's hospital to get her blood drawn. So we went home, and I was, and I think back on this time, the kind of stress I was feeling is just, it literally makes me want to die thinking back on it. Cause I was just that stressed. I was so scared, cause I now look back and I know beyond any doubt that part of me knew unconsciously. I wasn't conscious, but there was a deep part of me that knew that Olive was not going to be around for very long. I think it's just a mother's intuition.
Wow.
And one of the ways that manifested itself is I was obsessed with taking pictures of her and taking video of her. And I was obsessed with making sure that they were safe. Like I would literally send copies of everything to my parents. I had everything on flash drives. I was just this sense of like urgency as far as like documenting every moment of my time with her, And so I think that when she started to get these bruises, part of me was like, oh my God, this is it. Like something's really wrong. And so, anyways, the bruises, they didn't go away. And so I ended up, and then she stopped eating because she was still nursing at the time. And she stopped eating. I woke up one morning and she wouldn't nurse. And so I was like, all right, I have to take her in to the children's hospital. So I remember driving to the children's hospital and I went in to get her blood drawn, and literally the panic I was feeling, I just could hardly function. I was just in such a panic because I just knew, Yeah. I knew something was very, very wrong. I had already Googled leukemia probably 20 times at that point, and I just had a feeling, I left, I was driving home, and within like 30 minutes, I got a phone call from my pediatrician saying, he was just like, where are you? And I was like, I'm in the car. He's like, where's Olive? I was like, she's in the back seat. He's like, how is she? And I was like, she's sleeping. He's like, I need you to turn around right now and go back to the ER. He's like, I know this is going to scare you, but her platelet level is so low right now that she could spontaneously hemorrhage and die at any second. So you have to go back to the ER right now.
Jesus.
Yeah. And so while I had him on the phone, I asked him, I was like, is it cancer? And he was like, there's a good possibility that it's cancer. Yes. And so I just knew. I just hung up, and it was just terrible. Absolutely awful.
Yeah.
So I took her back to the ER, and we got there, and it was all just a nightmare. I can go through all of that, but we don't have time really. To make a very, very, very long story short, we ended up living in the hospital for about 7 months. She went through her chemotherapy, which was very difficult for me because I don't believe that chemotherapy is going to be the answer for cancer treatment. Mm-hmm. I never have. I actually think that makes very little sense as far as and I know it works. I know it works sometimes, and so I don't bash it in a way that I don't think it should be used as a treatment method, but it was just very hard for me to give my 11-year-old those kind of harsh chemicals, knowing that she already probably had some kind of issue metabolizing chemicals in the first place. That's probably why she had developed cancer, Mm-hmm. And so it was very hard for me to start that treatment in the first place. But she ended up going through 6 months of chemotherapy, and then we thought she was done. We thought there was no evidence of disease. But then they did one last bone marrow biopsy, and it showed that her cancer had actually returned. So she had relapsed. And within a couple months of that, she ended up passing away. So we were in the hospital for, there's a whole long story behind all of that, but she, so she was 18 months old and 4 days when she died.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so very sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was, it's definitely, like I said, the first chapter of my life was from the time I was born to my car accident. And the second chapter of my life is from the moment I had that car accident and I got out of that car to her diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then, and her death, and then the third chapter was, after she died and picking up the pieces and deciding how I wanted to move forward,
mm-hmm.
With my life following something that was so devastating.
It's the most devastating thing that could ever happen.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like peak devastation, and I'm just so sorry. It's wow. I mean, I know my mom lost my sister Hannah when she was a couple months old of pneumonia.
It's awful.
Yeah, and it's just like the death of a child. It's just so. It seems almost like a perversion of nature. It seems like almost like it's evil in a way. Like, and I don't use evil and good in these terms like usually, but it just seems it's so devastating and so dark that it just seems like a perversion of nature. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's deeply unfair. I mean, it's just, and that's the thing is that and one of the things that's so hard to accept about life in general is life is not fair. There's nothing about life that's fair, unfortunately, but it's just not fair. It's not fair that some people get to grow up and some people don't get to grow up, and some parents and every parent should get to see their child grow up, but not everybody gets to, and it's deeply unfair. Yeah. Absolutely.
How did that,
but
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, for me, it's been one of the parts of the journey that's been so interesting for me with my loss of Olive is my experience with her throughout her illness, and then upon her death, and then following her death. And I'm going to say like my belief system around it, because that's really what it is. But a lot of my beliefs I feel like came directly from her, or my relationship with her. And so for instance, like so like I said, I think that part of me knew, and part of me knew that she wasn't going to be around for very long. And part of me knew she was probably going to die. Mm-hmm. And even throughout her treatment, I had that with me. I kept it in the back of my mind. I never let it affect me. I always 100% was like, she's going to make it, we're going to do this. It's going to be fine. Like everything's going to be fine. But I also knew that like, there was something telling me that, this is her path. And as much as her mother, you want to keep her here with you, and you want to protect her, and you want to make sure that she's alive and well. Like her life is her life.
Yeah.
And this is what it looks like. And your job is not to control that. It's to be present with that and provide her with as much comfort and love and safety as you possibly can, come whatever may for her. And having that kind of mindset where it was like, this is her life, this is her path. I don't know what it means. And just truly feeling in my heart. And it's hard for me to talk about this because I don't want other people to ever think that I think this has to be true for everyone, because I absolutely don't, But for me, I believe that Olive's life was her life, and it looked like it was supposed to look. You know what I mean? Like, I believe that Olive came here to have the life that she had, and she came here to have the experiences that she had, and her life was perfect just the way that it was. It was perfect, and it was beautiful, and it was devastating, just like everyone's life, but it was hers, And for me, that kind of mindset has helped me, because I don't feel like this sense of like, it's complex, because I want to say that like, I don't have this sense of like anger or like she should still be here, mm-hmm. or she shouldn't have, but that's not true. As a human, I do have those feelings, Yeah. I do. I do feel those things. I do often, in my grief process, I do feel really angry, and I do want her back, but there's this underlying sense of peace that I also carry with me that, was kind of unexpected. I mean, if I had imagined myself going through this experience before it happened, I wouldn't have really predicted, me feeling like that was something that she and I were meant to go through together. But yeah. I do believe that.
I think that's a remarkable and beautiful way to look at it, honestly. And I don't like, I think I appreciate you sort of popping in to say, look, I'm not saying that this is the way it is for you. I appreciate that. But the fact of the matter is that we all experience grief differently. We all have different ways of looking at experiences, and emotional truths are unique to each of us, right? And I think the way you looked
Absolutely,
at that experience with Olive and her life is truly stunning, and like a really beautiful, I don't want to say gift, but it's just a really beautiful way to look at it. Looking, me looking at that experience from the outside, I think it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you. I think that grief is it's such a tricky thing, and again, like I criticize our culture so much, and when I say our culture, I'm talking about like the over, popular culture of the United States, really.
Yeah.
But because that's all I really have ever lived. But grief is such a tricky thing in our culture, and it's unfortunate because it makes it hard to talk about it openly and honestly sometimes, because there's so much pressure to get past the raw grief to some bigger picture,
Yeah.
to some lesson underlying it, or, all of that. Which I think is toxic, and I don't think it's good. You know what I mean? I don't think that's a positive expectation to have of people. But it's also what I've experienced from that is that I actually, in my experience, I do feel like I learned a lot from Olive. I mean, she's been my greatest teacher. It's not that I don't think her life purpose was to teach me anything. I just think that I was graced by her presence, like we all are graced by the people that we love in our lives. And through the experience we had together, and the kinds of courage and the kinds of just reserves of strength that I had to find within myself in order to be present with her during such a horrendous and just like absolutely horrific experience, has taught me a lot, and it has tremendously impacted my growth, as a person, and my ability to empathize with others.
Yeah.
It really has, like, so deeply,
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Like, of course it has. And I agree that, like, I just think it's like the broad statement here is that we all experience grief differently. And I think you're right, Maggie, to sort of discredit the idea that, like, or this cultural pressure to, like, we got to go through it. And then on the other end is this sort of wrapped bow tie sort of gift that, once we're through it, but like, because that's not real. That's just the, cosmopolitan version of grief. That's not reality. So I think you're being very clear about that it's this deeply personal, and it's all, there's nothing one-to-one there. It's all sort of messy and weird, and just like life is.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's life,
Yeah.
The layers of complexity are really endless.
Yeah.
And so unique to every single person,
Talk to me a little bit about now, like, kind of the work you do, and the things you've learned through the experience of the loss of a child, and those types of experiences, and how you've sort of poured that into the work you do now. And tell me about the work you do now.
So I am a therapist by training, but I'm not currently doing psychotherapy with clients. I'm doing what I call holistic life coaching. And the difference I see between that is that it's just like kind of the focus of what I'm doing. I'm not diagnosing or treating any mental illnesses. I'm not doing any deep trauma work with people. And I can also do it at a distance, which is, with psychotherapy, it's a little tricky to do that because you have to be licensed in all the states where you see people, and I prefer I wish that I could do psychotherapy, more broadly. And someday I think I'll be able to. I think that'll change in the next 10 years is what I'm predicting that will change. I hope it does. But so right now I do holistic life coaching with people, which encompasses a lot of different things, but at its core, I look at it as just helping people find their way home back to their true selves, and kind of refining, reconnecting with their authenticity. I work with a lot of empaths and highly sensitive people, and people who have trauma or just past experiences that have made it difficult for them to be able to set appropriate boundaries. So boundaries is a big thing I work with my clients. Some codependency boundaries, kind of relationship stuff. And then I also kind of weave in there astrology and tarot as well. Tarot a little less. I do tarot readings, but I also, with the astrology, I use that with my holistic life coaching clients quite a bit, because I use astrology as a way to kind of have an outside, kind of like a way of looking at yourself objectively, as far as like your personality goes, and then also your kind of life path, what you came here to do. Yeah, I am also going through a process right now where I'm trying to distill down exactly what I do. So I'm in the process of that. So,
yeah. Well, maybe we can find it together today.
Yeah.
Well, like, to go back to like you sort of working at the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program as a mentor, like having this light bulb moment of like, I found my superpower, like this is what I want to do. And that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Yep. Basically holding space for people to kind of come into their self, their authenticity, which really, for me, I mean, it's just like, that's it. Like, that's the ticket in this life. It's like, I think it's just this whole journey about how just trying to come back to yourself,
Yeah.
Like, what is it? What is being me? Like, what does that even mean? What does that look like? Because we get so many messages about what it's supposed to look like, but what does it really look like, at the end of the day?
I love that. And I'll say also that that's all we can do. That's all we can control, right? Is ourselves. Like I am often sort of at peace with the idea that this pale blue dot is a bit of chaos, and there's so much out of our control. And what we can control, as you pointed out, is ourselves. What does that look like? Defining us, figuring out like our hearts, all that stuff. That is the work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're right. At the end of the day, that is all you can control, That's why, when Olive was sick, it was like, okay, all I can do is love her.
Yeah.
Period. And honestly, that's a lesson right there for life. It's like, all we can do is love other people and love ourselves. And that's really it, it's just offer that compassion. That's what's going to make the world a better place.
Yeah. That's the good stuff. So boundaries are an important thing in my life, and it's something that I've tried to work on, and being a very sensitive person and certainly a recovering people pleaser. I have had to learn boundaries, and actually even in this show itself, like I've had to set boundaries for myself, because I have a tendency, as Jessica, my wife, points out to me all the time, I have a tendency to put all of the things on others and forget about myself, right? And so the boundary there is, I need to not do that. I need to find a bit more balance. So when you're talking about like creating boundaries with your clients, like what kinds of tools are you trying to get them to develop to do that? Because boundaries are hard.
They really are. I remember, and especially they're hard for people if they come from an enmeshed family system, which I know that's kind of a term that I don't know if that's a term that a lot of people even know, but like I said, I came from a family system where there wasn't really any boundaries, which that's what that means. There's not really any boundaries in the family system. And that makes it, when you come from that, you don't even know what a boundary is. I remember the first time I heard of the word boundary, I was in graduate school. It's 2010. I was 23, 24. And it changed my life because I was like, oh my God, like I can tell people no, and it's healthy. Like I can actually say like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. I mean, that's a very basic version of boundaries. They're so, like you said, boundaries are so complex. There's so many layers of boundaries. We have mental boundaries, we have physical boundaries, we have emotional boundaries. And it's basically just an awareness of where I end and where you begin. And so, for instance, like physical boundary, like what is comfortable and what is uncomfortable for me as far as sharing physical space, there's a boundary there. It's like, those are boundaries. Those are physical boundaries. Yeah.
How do we,
exactly what
I appreciate that. How do we get, like, the thing about boundaries is there's a component of, like you mentioned the examples of like what am I comfortable with? But like, how do you find out what you're comfortable with? Right? Like there's an emotion, there's a piece of it that's like this self-awareness.
Absolutely. Yep. Yes. And self-awareness is something I talk about so much. It's just because for me, it's like awareness is everything. For me, it's like, it's the first step, because if you're not aware of something, you can't do anything about it. I mean, who's to say you might not want to do anything about it, but you don't even have a choice, if you're not aware of it. So yes. So with boundaries, the first step is really becoming aware of what makes you uncomfortable. And unfortunately, a lot of us haven't been taught how to even feel into our own discomfort. We're so used to being uncomfortable all the time. We're so used to allowing ourselves to constantly be navigating situations that are unideal for us, that we don't even know we're doing it, which is sad. But that's true for a lot of people. It was true for me for a really long time, where I didn't even realize I was uncomfortable because I was just uncomfortable all the time. And so one of the things that I do with clients around boundaries is like, a homework I might send home with a client would be try to pay attention this week to any time when you have a feeling of discomfort in your body. Like, I don't, if it's anxiety, if it's like your heart racing, just start to pay attention to that, because that's the first step. Because then you can ask yourself, when you start to be able to actually in the moment realize you're uncomfortable, that's when you get to stop and ask yourself, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Why am I uncomfortable? Because from there you can say, am I uncomfortable because something physical has happened? Like, is somebody invading my physical space? Is someone invading my mental space or not allowing me to, take up the space that I need to take up, or, whatever it may be? Or is it an emotional thing that's happening? Then you can actually start to break it down and figure out what boundaries are being potentially violated or what's happening. But you have to first be able to even tell that you're uncomfortable and something's going on. Yeah.
It's like we're developing a more advanced physiological response to discomfort. Because when we're kids or children, you feel something bad, or you recognize that if you touch the burner, it's gonna hurt you, right? Mm-hmm. But that's it. That's where it ends. That that's a discomfort and you want to avoid that, right? Like, that's the relationship that you have. But as you become older and you get into adulthood, that has to become more complex.
Exactly. Well, and when it's a relationship, so it's one thing with a burner, that's just like an inanimate object. But whenever that relationship is between two human beings, it becomes absolutely infinitely complex.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because your boundary with the burner is like, I can't touch that thing.
Right.
Touch
Sure.
the boundary. You
Yeah.
know, like we can't make contact, physical contact. But with a human, if you think about, so kids, so this is one of the reasons why I feel so passionately about helping people with parenting stuff too, is because so many things, again, in our culture that we do with our children, we set them up to not have very good boundaries. So I'll give you an example. It's very common for young children to be encouraged to give grandma and grandpa a kiss or give their uncle a hug.
Oh man.
You know, and the child will be physically, very visibly, physically uncomfortable. They might even be crying. They might even be clinging to your legs. And there's still this expectation that we're going to take care of the adult's feelings over your feelings because grandma wants a hug. We don't want to hurt grandma's feelings. So you're going to give grandma a hug. So what we're basically setting up our children to feel is uncomfortable, and we're normalizing it. Because the most important people in their life, the people that keep them safe, their parents that love them, are telling them, this is what's supposed to happen right now.
Wow.
You are supposed to override your instinct that's telling you, this is a boundary. I don't want to kiss this basically stranger. You know?
Yeah.
We're telling them to override it. And we do that over and over and over and over and over and again to our children. And we don't even know we're doing it because it's so commonplace. And then you have adults who, you know, not surprisingly, don't know when they're uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't know when their boundaries are being violated in a relationship. And that's kind of how that all kind of starts, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 things. The headline for this episode is Maggie Hates Culture. I'm just kidding.
Maggie hates pop culture.
Maggie hates pop culture. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
The second thing is a question like, are you, as part of your sort of your own personal growth in terms of your own practice and your healing practice and what you do for clients, is a part of that going to be working with parents and like parenting stuff?
I really hope so. But, you know, like the thing that the challenge I'm going through right now is that so my job that I had before I had my daughter Farron,
I love that name.
Thank you. It means of the fairies. It's
Oh
an
my
old
God,
English name.
that is magical.
Yeah, it's spelled Faeryn. So it's like, you know, the English version of fairy with an N on the end.
That's great.
Love it. Yeah, thank you. But so before I had Farron, I was a trauma specialist for a nonprofit called Child Safe. And they specialized in therapy for children and adults who were sexual abuse survivors. Like all I worked with were sexual abuse survivors. And I was a play therapist. Most of my clients were kids, but whenever you're a play therapist, you also work very closely with the parents. You know, I mean, that's part of the job.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it. And so part of my challenge now that I am branching out and doing my own thing, you know, having my own practice and trying to decide exactly what my niche is, who I'm going to work with. It's hard because I could do it with parents. I could do just parenting, you know, but I also really love working with adults and their boundary systems. So like when I said that I'm trying to kind of distill down exactly what population I'm going to be focusing on, that's a very active process for me at the moment. And I do work with all these different populations right now. I do work with people on parenting. I do work with people with, you know, relationship stuff. I do work with people with mindfulness, teaching them mindfulness and about self-awareness, you know, but I'm really feeling this push right now to distill it down to one group. But it's hard because I've just done a lot of different, I've worked with a lot of different populations, and I really enjoy working with, you know, a lot of different populations. So I do hope to work with parents though. Absolutely. 100%.
That's awesome.
It's one of my biggest passions for sure.
That's great. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's transition into empathy heroes.
Okay.
So listeners, this is the part of the episode where my guest and I each mention an empathy hero in our lives, someone who is very empathetic, compassionate, big heart, someone we admire. Could be someone in our personal lives, could be a character from a book or a movie, anyone really. And I will go first to give you, Maggie, a moment to think on yours. My empathy hero this week is the author and poet, and I'm going to butcher the name. It's Rainier Maria Rilke. Rainier says, I love this quote, and I had thought about this, or let me read the quote and then I'll provide some context. So the quote is, let everything happen to you. I'm going to start that over. Let everything happen to you. Beauty and terror, just keep going. No feeling is final. And that quote was the sort of end still from the movie Jojo Rabbit, which I watched last weekend. A beautiful, kind of like hard to achieve film about basically this young boy in Nazi Germany as the war is sort of coming to a close, and him sort of being in this German sort of like Nazi recruitment camp. He's like 10 years old, and he has his sort of imaginary friend is Adolf Hitler, and him sort of trying to come to terms with that, and it's a really huge-hearted, at times so hilarious, beautiful story, and I was given this gift of this beautiful writing by this poet Rilke. So, listeners, if you haven't watched Jojo Rabbit, go see it, check out the poet Rilke.
I have to check that out.
Yeah, it's great.
I think I don't know about the first name. I think it may be Rainier, but I think the last name's Rilke.
Rilke? Okay.
Rilke. I think I've heard.
Got it.
I think that's right.
Cool.
Maybe not. But yeah.
It's okay.
No, I love that poet though. I'd never heard that quote until I saw it on your Instagram, but I love that.
Yeah. So how about you? Who's your empathy hero this week?
My empathy hero this week would be a professor that I had in my master's program at Naropa. Her name is Sue Wallingford. And the reason she's on my mind lately is because, so when I went back to Naropa after Olive died, so I waited a year after Olive had passed before I went back to finish my master's. And it was really hard for me to go back to school because the last time I had been in that building, I had been pregnant with Olive.
Right.
And then, just the whole going back and doing rigorous study after something like that is just kind of unthinkable in a lot of ways.
Right.
But I just really wanted to finish my master's so that I could do what I wanted to do, so I pushed through. But she was a huge part of that year for me, just because we had to do internships during that year. And she was kind of like my internship, like the class that was like connected to the internship, so she was there for me during all my internship stuff, which my internships ended up being like a complete shit show. And it was very difficult, in a lot of different ways. But she was really there for me emotionally through all of that. She held the space like so beautifully. Like I would come to class and I think I cried pretty much every class, and it was a really, intimate setting. Like the classes at Naropa, like everybody kind of sits on the floor and we don't have shoes on. We're like on meditation cushions and there's like 6 of us, or like 10 of us,
Yeah.
So it's like a very intimate, like comfortable, safe setting for the most part. But anyways, one of the reasons why Sue is on my mind is because her son died very suddenly a couple weeks ago. He was 30 years old.
Wow.
And yes, and he was a beautiful, I never met him, but he's just one of those people, when you see his pictures, he just radiates like just life, He was just, I could just tell he's a beautiful person. He was a tattoo artist in the Denver area and very well known. His tattoo, his art was very well known. He has like a huge following on Instagram, like over 200, maybe 300,000 followers. And I'm pretty sure that he suicided. I think that is what happened. And she was in Costa Rica on sabbatical when she found out. And I've just been from afar, because now I don't live there anymore, watching her journey with this of losing her child. And of course, feeling very connected with it because I have my own experience with losing a child, and then feeling deeply connected to her because she really supported me, in very many ways when I was going through like very intense grief around my loss of Olive. And just seeing how she's handling this, and that's the other thing, like however people handle grief, they handle it, and that's totally fine. It's beautiful. It's different for everyone. But she's just been very transparent with her process, and she's an art therapist. And so just seeing like the art, the beauty that she's created from this situation, and seeing how her son Jace had 2 kids. He left behind a wife and 2 children, and his children are like very young. I mean, 3 and 1 maybe. And just seeing her process of like explaining to his 3-year-old, where he is, and the concept of death through her art, and holding the space for her grandsons, when I know that her heart is absolutely shattered as well, Yeah. So she's my empathy hero for sure right now.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's like such a, like I know that like the sort of, it feels weird to say grief community is like very connected and huge and very powerful for a lot of people. And I think that's just an example of how we can, how beautiful empathy is, right? Like we experience a thing and we can be there for others, or sort of put our hearts out there for others when they're experiencing a similar thing. And I think that's such a beautiful example of that power that we all have,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Maggie, where can the listeners connect with you?
The easiest place to connect with me is definitely Instagram. My handle is Sacred Circle Holistic Healing. And I do have a Facebook page, but that is just getting started. I don't post there as regularly, but it's under the same title. So those are the best places to find me. And then I have a website that is the same, www.sacredcircleholistichealing.com.
Great. Well, listeners, all of those will be linked in the show notes for this episode. Maggie, it was an honor and a true pleasure to hear your story, be there for your vulnerability. I really appreciate you and your big heart.
Thank you. Same, Known. I really enjoyed this.
Good. Well, listeners,
and I'm sure we will be in touch.
Yes. Listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's Yumi Empathy.
La, la, la.